AIVANHOV. Direct, April 30th 2020. Well, dear friends, I'm extremely happy to see you again, and I'm delighted to be able to exchange with you, and, of course, I convey to you all my blessings for living what you are living, and we're with you from now on, who are getting closer and closer. There is no need, of course, even if I suspect that there will be questions, to ask oneself questions other than all that is happening, and which is shown to you both at home and everywhere on your means of communication between you. So, of course, we will see if there are any questions on this, if there are any questions about other things other than my answers that were not mentioned in the questions. I will come back to that, as you know, as we go along in our discussion. So, first of all, my dear friend, I am listening to your first question. Brother, greetings OMA. That is the first question. Can you explain to me what embrace in the daily life means? I know that you have spoken about it, however I believe that I do not understand what it means in the elements that we are living now. Thank you OMA. Then, of course, dear brother, we had spoken countless times about this notion of embracing. To embrace is from the outset to position oneself as close as possible to the present instant. Even before defining what it means to embrace, I am going to propose to you what the effects are, and the resolution, of course. Because as soon as you get closer to this notion of embracing, you will evidently place yourself in the evidence of the instant, in the evidence of what is to be lived, without prevaricating, without projecting into the future, or without emitting the slightest fear or question in relation to what you know, or in relation to what is unknown, which is taking place, either in your intimate life around you at this moment, or on the world. To embrace simply means to be available for what is, starting from the saying, and I think it is a phrase that I have had the opportunity to say many times, and others too, that what happens cannot be avoided. Everything that must happen will happen, and everything that must not happen will not happen. This is not fatalism, if I may say so, on the contrary. It is also about coming closer and closer with more and more certainty to the present instant. Embracing can only be done in the present instant. There is, and I would say there is a form of reciprocity between embracing and living the present instant. We have told you, and we have invited you in various but increasingly insistent ways, to enter into it. It is not an empty word, that is, to find the evidence that is there, and the best way to do that, if I may say so, is to be in that present instant, which cannot discriminate intellectually, emotionally, with respect to a known situation or a fear, or an anger, or anything else. It is to live what is without trying to understand, without trying to react, but as an evidence that imposes itself. Of course, it is not to do nothing and not to remain with arms folded. There will evidently be times in relation to what is happening, questions, solutions to be found, but which will be placed more and more easily in the present instant, which is the ability to embrace and pass through in totality all that is presented on the inner screen as well as on the outer screen. From this point on, the observer dissociates himself, if I may say so, from what is observed and is no longer subject to what is lived in the vision of this world, in inner resentment or in an inner emotion. At that moment, you are neither the observer nor the stage, and you become agape. There is no need to think, there is no need to ask yourself questions, it is extremely simple, it is independent of any notion, as we have practiced, of opening or vibratory rise. Because it is available and accessible to everyone, from the moment you think of embracing rather than reacting, or rather than letting your mind, or the emotions that belong to the person, run free. We have often told you that you are not a person, but this cannot be a belief, it must be verified. And when you verify it and you live it, you touch the present instant, which is nothing other than time zero, which is nothing other than what I had said in Quebec. I remember, prior to any form, prior to any scenario, prior to any nightmare, prior to any dimension, there is the memory of who I am, beyond being as well as non-being. It is time zero, and that is when agape, that unspeakable joy, that more and more brothers and sisters are living. At that moment there are no more questions. You're immersed in the present instant, no matter what your body lives, no matter what your country lives, and no matter what this world lives. You do not deny it, you do not refuse it, you embrace it, and it goes through you, because it is a nightmare, as it has been described, to perfection in the Apocalypse of St. John, and, of course, in other prophets. You're in these prophetic times, which are being fulfilled, that you are living. So it is not a date, it is a succession, but it is no longer chronological. I remind you, it was said 2 or 3 years ago. But all these events, which we have written together, are taking place right now. You're playing them. That's exactly what this is all about. So evidently, if you are still in character, in the idea of being a story, what's going to happen, even if you have lit the vibrations, even if you have visions, you're going to say that you're fed up, that it's too prolonged, that it's unbearable, that it's too long. It shows you instantly that you are not in a gape, but still subject to history, to your person, or even I would say in a broader way, to all your living conditions, be it your health, be it your mental state, be it your vibratory state. It proves that you are still somewhere in there. The one who is agape sees what is to be seen, sees the ignominy, but does not live the ignominy, because he knows that he has the resource in what he is beyond being, in the heart of the heart, in Shantinalaya as we were telling you, to literally absorb and burn all that. We have always told you that it is the conjunction of the simulacrum and the sacred. You'll see, I think there will be questions about the virus, but what is a virus? I have already had the opportunity to talk about it in early March. It is an astral particle, residue that is evacuated from the collective unconscious, but also from Gaia, but also the chief head of what I call the bad boys, the puppets, but you can call them today by their most official name, psychopaths, who want, in this nightmare scenario, but remember that everything contributes to the establishment of the light, and that even this simulacrum of the arrival of the Messiah, of the arrival of Christ by air, was a vast swindle, whose only purpose is to play that bad boys, even if they are psychopaths, in order to wake you up. You predict everything. Until you live it, you are not at peace, and it is not lasting. Understand this well and see the difference between what countless brothers and sisters' life it and describe to you on your social networks, or between you and those who are not yet living it. It is simply an invitation to perhaps stay more, precisely, in this embracing and in this notion of embracing, which will bring you closer to the present instant, and therefore logically to zero time. There is nothing to do, as Baidu would say. You just have to try to be lucid, and it's not complicated at the moment, if you're honest, but don't be reluctant. For others, it will be much quicker. Stopping all outside activity will plunge them in a natural way, there too, in this embrace and in this truth, which is not the truth of a person, a dogma or the truth of anything. It is the total truth of who you are. There, I think I must have impinged on other matters as well, but we will let you continue, if you wish. Brother, I am extremely glad to see you like this again through your head, Chief. From a human point of view, from a person's point of view, even if we are awake, even if we are liberated, even if we know that by being absolute all that is completely transcended, there are spaces within us that are really fed up with this circus. So, of course, we know that there is no date, we know that it is now. However, from our point of view, we find that this now is not going to last any longer. You're not living it. Then you can't really know it. But we're interested in your point of view. I say we because there are many of us asking ourselves that question. With all my love, Jean. Well, dear friend, I think I have answered in advance. Here is the difference of questioning, of the one who, even if he knows the absolute, does not live it, because evidently, there would be no such questioning. I answered just before. It's an encouragement, it's not by having, by expressing, a form of weariness or fed up with it, that it's going to change anything. The only way you can help is to find yourself, to remember who you are. And it's extremely easy. Ebba explained all that to you in this script he created, which he had written, and each of you is Ebba, in his rather musical revelation version, to show you that everything was written, but also that the script at the end was written and that, with the light of agape, and thus beyond the vibrations, you had to be able to no longer be fooled, not to show anger, not to manifest a feeling of expectation. What are you waiting for to be? That is what the theater scene is telling you. What are you waiting for to wake up? What are you waiting for to no longer give your approval? That does not mean reacting, not entering into war, but that the only source that will consume all that is yourself, by the power of the fire of the heart, of the igneous fire, that I remind you that you are. All this of course has been written. I remind you, we have described and lived it, and you have been accompanied by by OMA, by me, by Eber, who explained all these cocks to you, and who allowed you to readjust beyond even all stories, even those of the dimensions, where we accompanied you in the supramental, that is to say vibratory, stage. So when I hear that many of you are fed up, it is an invitation to reposition yourselves beyond the character, and especially beyond the script, in order to enjoy the show, so to speak, in all serenity and in all love. Because you cannot cross over with fear, you cannot cross over with your character, you must let yourself cross over. You do not cross anything, as Bida said, and it is not a play on words, you have never moved. As he says, it's a swindle. Until you have seen that consciousness is not what you are, but a projection of who you are, within the worlds of form and dimensions, you are not free. You are still under constraint, regulated by the consciousness, by the collective soul of the earth as well. Even if the planetary astral is dissolved, there are still miasmas that need to be enlightened. I remind you that the real apocalypse that you are living is the revelation, that nothing of what has been hidden from you of the scenario, of the occult of the scenario, and the finality of the scenario, has not been lived. Because it is something that you must live, within this pseudo-individuality and separation that is called form or consciousness, to discover your truth, which is the common truth. That is why, as Enlil said, it is absolute, and it is not relative from a point of view or an aspect of consciousness. Agape is there, and only there. Afterwards, live your life. Anyway, you can't do anything else. So this is the best way to be happy, whatever the circumstances of your body or your situation, if I may say, how you say, not locked up, but you are confined, yes. There's a pun to be made here. Look at the collective fear, even if there is no longer an astral, look at how humanity, in its totality, in a general way, even if it is intended, written by the light, with what ease you have renounced what was yet the freedom of every human being, whatever the regime. But that is another story. Of course, it is not a value judgment, since in any case, absolutely everything brings you back, I would say, to the truth and to the essential. And everything contributes to that. And if you're agape, you can only live it and see it. So from there you're at peace, you have nothing to do, you have nothing to plan, neither tomorrow nor the day after tomorrow, because if you reread carefully the prophecies and the apocalypse, you will understand that it is not really going to go in the direction of any improvement. And besides, for those who love riddles, but who are now realities, I have been telling you for years, every year before the month of May, the beautiful month of May, you'll be able to verify it. You can see that for many years now, you have been going through some kind of vibratory unconsciousness cycles, which sometimes reproduce themselves with some days off, but more or less in the same periods, from one year to the next. This is the influence of Nibbia, directly, and you are getting closer and closer to what is called the vernal point, that is to say the 0 point of the galactic alignment, under the radiation that has been called photonics, but much more than photonics, it is mainly ultraviolet radiation and gamma radiation, as described by Archangel Michael at the celestial weddings. And all this, you see it in your sky, you see it everywhere, don't you? That's what I had to answer that question. Brother. Question from a sister from Spain. Many consciences are awakening during this pandemic. It may seem like a failure to the bad boys. That's how we hear that they want to set the table again with a second pandemic and a slightly different virus. Hey, I didn't hear you. Brother, I'll take it from here. Sister from Spain, and then I lost track. Brother. So, a lot of consciences are being awakened during this pandemic. It may seem like a failure to the bad boys. That's how you hear that they want to go back to the drawing board with a second pandemic and a slightly different virus. What about it? Because we are tired of living this fool's game. There you go, I've also answered in anticipation. Until you accept it, which is embracing, that means there's no present instant. You are still perpetuating an earthly scenario. What will become of the virus? What will become of the economy? I reassure you, there is no economy anymore, any more than there is a virus. But there are waves, and in the simulacrum, you have waves that are emitted from everywhere in your cities. But you also have the waves of cosmic radiation, of ultraviolet radiation, of radiation from the source, that hit you hard, and cause electrical and magnetic changes in what may be left of insulating layers. but to ask the question of another virus. But if you have to, there will be dozens of viruses in the scenario that has been written, as long as you do not come out of the nightmare, and coming out of the nightmare is not fighting the nightmare. You know very well that when you sleep, it is the nightmare that wakes you up. And as long as you see a nightmare and you are not overwhelmed by the nightmare in any way, you will not turn inward. When there is no other way out, you can only turn inward, and discover the truth. It is that simple. I can't tell you any better. All the questions that are going to go back to history, and the viruses, and how it's going to end, and where do we go next, I'm telling you this, you have all the answers in the Apocalypse of St. John, and in many, many prophets. I am not going to detail the stages. The only element of these stages that we have been telling you for more than 2 years is that there would not be one aspect of the stages that would be identifiable in time. The more time you spend in the nightmare scenario, the more the event will be precipitated to the surface, therefore, of consciousness and of your lived experience. At all levels, whether it is the cosmic event, whether it is the famine, whether it is the viruses, whether it is the war, it does not matter, it will all happen, and the more time, if I may say so, that passes in the illusion of time, the more it will concentrate, and create a shockwave that no one can ignore. That's how it's always been announced, and that's how you live it. So you can't change anything that is, but you can, if I may say so, fast forward, rather than backward, can't you, so that the film will unfold in a different way, just in terms of speed, like a film that's running. You can't change the film. Understand that. But what can you do about it? Well, be as close as possible to yourself, as close as possible to simplicity, as close as possible, if you prefer the vibration of the heart, in the silence. Do what life asks you to do. If it is to do nothing, do nothing. If it is to take care of your children, good courage. If it is to take care of a garden, then have joy in it. And that's it. If you're interested in the scenario that is being played out, and I think many have, you have done your investigations, you have seen the truth of what the conspiracy is, which is no longer a conspiracy since it is announced, isn't it, everywhere. The only way to fight is to wake up, to remember, everything else is a waste of time, and I am going to say this for each of the questions that will be in this sense, not to not answer them, since the answer is what you are living, right now, in the moment. There's no tomorrow in the game, there's just a scenario, a film that runs more or less quickly. Remember that you can influence time, not by changing the film, but by making it scroll more or less quickly, a little at the speed at which Nibia seems to move forward or backward in the sky already for more than 10 years. We had also talked about this at length. So, I'm listening to you. Brother. So another question from Brother Gene. It is in the month of May that in the temperate zones the hawthorns blossom. The month of May is the month of Mary. In relation to the preceding questions, enough of this game of fools, with all that we are currently living in the world, would not the month of May be ideal for the call of Mary? As I said, I believe there too, I answered with the beautiful month of May, which is indeed the month of Mary and the month of Hawthorn. But there is also the Assumption of Mary, which is in the month of August, there is also that Feast of Michael, which is at the end of September, and, of course, you have Advent and Christmas. And as I was saying before, every year there is a kind of cycle that takes you through vibratory stages, but also stages of consciousness, but also in the final scenario from now on. So from there, have fun making predictions if you want, but you're in it. I say it again as I said last time, nothing more and nothing less. And I even think that if you were like the frog I was talking about at the beginning of our interviews, more than 10 years ago, you remember the frog whose temperature gradually rises and who doesn't feel anything. I would say that today the light of the light has raised the cooking temperature a little bit, and so many of you are waking up, because you feel that it is uncomfortable. As I say, it is no longer a dream, it is a nightmare, and there is no better way to wake up. So Mary's month, yes, is a nice month and would be a nice month for Mary's call. But I didn't say it was going to be this month, because as you know, and as we keep repeating over and over again, no one knows the date or the time. You may simply know that you've been in the middle of the final show already for a while, but then there, with a rush and a precipitation like no other, isn't it? So let's continue. Brother. A brother from Salvador, Brazil. Dear OMA, a joy to speak to you. I would like to know why many brothers, mainly here in Brazil, who are followers, I put it in quotation marks, of OU-trust dimensions, some having even helped to spread the teachings, today seem totally opposed to the word agape. Why did this happen, OMA? Thank you in advance for your answer. Our dear friend, this has already been the subject of many revelations. At that time I was speaking, remember, in 2016 and 2017, about the tornicota and the trap of the self, that is to say the spiritual pride that believes itself to be individuality, that believes it has to evolve. You had to evolve within this world, to rise in vibration, to discover the supramental, and to go beyond the supramental, and to discover the truth which is agape. Of course, for the one who does not live or who has some kind of visceral hatred towards this word, of course he does not live it. Why is it that so many brothers and sisters all over the planet who live it recognize themselves in this word? It is not a sect, it is not an adhesion to a word, it is simply the reality of the definition of this word, totally disinterested love of God for creation, that is to say for yourselves. If they are not able to accept this, it simply shows that they are still placing themselves in the dream of the evolution of consciousness, of a new root race, of a new earth. They haven't lost their pseudo-individuality. Whatever they say, they do not live agape. Whoever lives agape can only recognize himself as agape. It's unstoppable, of course. They're in the dream of consciousness somewhere. But, as I have always said, and as Ebba said, let the dreamers dream, with the nightmare they are living, they will naturally be led to let go of the illusion of the reality of a consciousness. They too will remember who they are. I remind you, and we have always told you this, the Archangel Enlil was the first one during the celestial wedding. When you meet the white paradise which is undergoing their physical actualization, it is no longer only the adamantine particles, it's not just the lines that connect the elf villages, as we explained a few years ago, it's not just around the trees, it's everywhere in the air, in the ether, it's what you see for some people, and you smell it. That's exactly what's going on. So of course, we told you that when you live this, no one can be fooled by the form and the consciousness. So let them. Let them go to the end of their dead end, but that's also a wonderful way to find yourself as they wrote it. You know very well that when one is agape, one sees clearly, one is lucid, but one cannot condemn anything, because everything is part of us, and everything was created by us. This is what Christ also said on his cross, if we want to use examples. Father, forgive them, they do not know what they are doing. Today, you're all going to know it, and the advantage is that by knowing, by finding yourselves in the white paradise, at the same time you access the truth, that is to say, what's still for some people and especially those who have turned away from OU-trust dimensions, again from the pride of the light, they are in the reflection and shimmering of the light, which I call clearly and definitively the Luciferian illusion, of the false light, of the perpetuation of the consciousness, is it not, in one form or another? So if it is Lucifer, well then, what is the trap of visions and other dimensions? It is obviously to enter into a binary circuit, which has been called transhumanism. The consciousness will be trapped in the vision, trapped in electronic circuits. This is the plan of the puppets, of course, this is the plan of the second beast of the apocalypse. The role of the first beast, it is being brought down right now. It is all what you used to call filth, Satanism, deep states, manipulations, but that does not mean that what is coming is better, it is the ultimate trap. Understand this well, you are going to live it and you are living it. There is only you and there is only you. Everything that is projected on the screen of consciousness is a decoy, and on a spiritual level, it is even worse. We had told you that we too, from some dimensions where we had to do, during the beginning of the year 2019, a purification of our stories, of our emotions, of the scripts, of the root races, of the geneticist mothers, of the Ekans, of the Dracos, of all these dimensions, what you are doing today within yourselves, whether you like it or not. Everyone will recognize themselves, because no one can escape what they are, even with consciousness, and this nightmare had to be played out, to allow you to find yourself, quite simply, and not to project. So you see, all those who still project, that's it, the new earth is created, the new dimension is there. All those who project by saying, "That's it," the deep state, the cabal, the evil boys, evil, have been eliminated by the less evil, but it's still history and scenario. It's still because you have not seen the nightmare of the second beast, and it's now, and it's being lived, there. Tell me about the beautiful month of May that's coming up. That's why I said I'd be back before the end of April. Now, don't make me say what I didn't say. There's not necessarily a pole shift in May, even though it may be while I'm talking, but all of this, if you like, everything is in motion, up to the tipping point, so to speak, or turning point. Exactly as with each of you, from the moment you remember, you fast forward through the film. As soon as you're afraid, as soon as you wonder, you break, you're resistant, you do not embrace, you do not let yourself cross, and you press the stop button on the tape. Each one of you does that, and you're a lot of people doing it. You see, laughs. And it's all happening right now. You can't change the film. Ever told you, the book has been closed for almost 2 years now, there's no script left, and if you try to find out about the psychics who work for governments, Ebba had talked about it a long time ago. He was not Ebba yet, during the celestial weddings, through what Enel had done to him to go see different places on the planet, there are psychics everywhere. And you know what the good surprise is? It is that whatever they try to see, after the event there is never the slightest earth, the slightest creation, that is to say that afterwards, for them, it is the black hole. Whatever happens, the film was written before the first projection of consciousness, before the alpha, but the alpha is nothing but the omega, it is the snake that bites its tail, it is the Ouroboros, is the return to the initial state, which is nothing other than the final state, which is nothing other than beatitude, which no longer depends on consciousness, on any world, on any evolution, or on anything individual. It is total beatitude. Watch, reread, revise video scenes, for example, of Mayan and Amoy. You were God said by D. The only difference between him and you is that he was living it and you were not yet. And you were at that moment. And don't see in the word God you're deliberate. I'm talking, if you prefer, you're both the God and the devil, you are the source, you are the writer, you are the dialoguist, you are the one who put it to music, and you are all the roles that were played. Simply, there is a convergence, a resonance and an entanglement, which you could call quantum, at time zero, which is actually the final solution since nothing has ever moved, is to see that all this was only a dream, all this was only a nightmare, and that you, really and concretely, have never moved. You have always been there, at time zero, in the heart of the heart. It is, what I am telling you, it is practical, it is not theory, it is not something you have to believe, it is something that can be lived by everyone, with extreme simplicity. If it seems complicated to you, and if it does not seem to correspond to all the teachings that have been given by OU dimensions, I remind you that the Absolute, we have been talking about it for 8 years, there was simply an evolutionary scheme from dimension to dimension that, just like you, we did not know, that we ourselves had written this scenario. During the year 2019, in its first part, we had to digest it, absorb it, evacuate it, go through it, we too. It's the same for everyone, even for the genetician mothers and even for the source, and even for Metatron. And it's happening right now. So I'm sure I've answered some more questions, but I'll leave you to it, my friend. Brother. Good. We move on to a sister from Terraza in Spain. So, when I was 17, I dreamt that I had a car accident and that I was dying. Part of me came out of my chest and climbed into a very powerful light, which attracted me like a magnet, and gave me indescribable joy. But every time I approached the light, I felt that I was going to go blind. But I was so happy that I didn't care. At one point when I was very close to this light, I noticed that if I entered the light, I would explode inside and mingle with it. However, before this happened, I awakened and was very afraid. I thought that my body was lifeless, so that I started to draw my soul or essence towards my body again. I was afraid to sleep for a few days, and what I would like to know is if I disappeared into that light, if I had entered it, what would it be, or what would happen to me? Thank you, OMA. So dear sister, I can tell you that what would have happened to you, you would have literally dissolved in wide paradise. And of course, you said it in this experience that you lived at 17 years old, there was this fear, because at 17 years old and especially, so many years ago I think, there was not yet the radiance of the Holy Spirit that appeared I remind you in 1984. At that time, certainly, there was, like many on this earth, independently even of beliefs or vibratory levels, there was a total identification with the body and with history, with evolution, with karma, with free will, with all this bullshit that was literally invented by the Aikans. We are perfect from all eternity. So, of course, when you were 17, there was fear. Today, there will be no choice but to go back into the body, at the time of the event. So you will evidently melt into what you're in truth, white paradise, which is the antechamber, if I may say so, or the other side of the room of the absolute. It is the abode of supreme peace, Shanti Malaya. It is all that Mahanandamaya has told you, what Gemma Galgani has told you about unity. All this has been prepared for a long time, to give you reference points, energetic and vibratory reference points, but also and above all, in the consciousness, that is to say, to locate you in the consciousness, and to see, in the end, that all this is a vast swindle, as we discovered with you, and that there is only a Gabe's felicity. And in this sense, yes, as Ebba or Bida say over and over again, both spirituality and consciousness are the worst swindle, because they take you directly into the views of Lucifer. And that's what was called the New World Order of Puppets. It's not really the first beast, it's the second beast. It's the ones that are all in the New Age, in the projection into the future. It's not a criticism, that's how they chose to wake up, and that they too will live, even the Ekans, even the bad boys. I'm not talking about the organic portals, but they will live the truth, because they are truth just as much as the one who plays the saints. He who is the same today, he is also the one who is the murderer opposite, it is the same. But you cannot accept that, you can only see it in yourselves, by living it, and today it is very easy. What you are resisting is becoming stronger, the more you'll be stuck on individualism, on consciousness, the worse you'll be, the more you'll consume yourself, the more you'll burn, the more uncomfortable it will be. And the more you let go, the quieter it is, the lighter it is, the more evident it is, and the less difficult it is. Notice today that for any one of you, even if you are liberated as they say, if you let your mind run free and you believe in it for a while, you are going to feel very bad. But you know that you only have to put yourself back in your heart to live agape. It is exactly the same thing when you have, for example, Chief Head or others, who flood you, even on your media, even on your TVs, with all this horror that has been programmed for you, but contrary to what they believe, that is to say a subjugation or an eradication of 9/10ths of humanity, it is rather the awakening of humanity, of the nightmare, and all that, it makes the film go forward, the film is running faster and faster. And maybe I got lost in the meaning of the question, but roughly speaking, you see, I'm trying to give you the framework of what you have in front of you and what you have inside you. It's up to you. Still the same. But when you find that you have no freedom of choice, and that true freedom is not a choice, but is the evidence of who you are before form and before consciousness, what do you still want to not go straight to the end scenario, since you know the end, and you are speeding up the film? The film accelerates. That is how you are no longer, as we used to say at the time, anchors or sowers of light, but that you are the light of the worlds. It is moreover you who have created all that, and when I say you, I put myself in it, and I put myself in everyone. Then we can go on, dear friend. Brother, a sister of Miniscares in Brazil. For days I feel like my eyeballs are growing, and I continually feel pain, burning and tingling around them. It's all related to radiation, and it wasn't over. Brother. Yes. Can you tell me about it? Thank you, OMA. So, this is radiation pressure related. During the celestial weddings, there was the radiation pressure of ultraviolet radiation, but also radiation from the source and Sirius, and solar radiation. All these sources of radiation are now fully active on Earth. In the simulacrum, you have the electromagnetic radiations that are weapons of war that you call waves, that you use for your media of communications that have been deployed everywhere, right? But in this simulacrum, it is waves made to kill, and in the sacred that ultraviolet radiation does. What does gamma radiation do above a certain dose? They kill you, just as they kill you. Simply, what dies? the dream, not you. And of course, if you resist somewhere, of course, it can sometimes be very important, give pain, but it's a variable, and it varies from day to day and hour to hour, but the more you accept it, the more it shivers, the more it fizzles, and, above all, the more it's joyful, the lighter it is. So, yes, the fact of having the eyes swelling in the head is because the pressure of the radiation coming from everywhere now, as I said, but preferentially, of course, at your highest point of the body, which is, when you are standing, the head, through the seventh chakra, and through the crown of the head, can indeed give extremely strong symptoms in the head, even for those who are in the absolute, namely, as you live, an increase in the whistling of the left ear, an increase in the pressure on certain zones called the elementary triangles of the head or the stars. I invite you newcomers to go and see this. All these circuits that have been described at the level of the head are being activated, with in particular, already for some months, the extremely important work on the vibratory structures of the body of eternity, between the triangle of the earth, at the level of the neck, at the back, and the chakra of the heart through the median channel, the channel of the ether, which was named the channel of the Sushumna, but this is mechanical data if you prefer, for those who are interested in mechanics. So, to have extremely strong and diverse sensations at this moment at the level of the head or the burning, or tingling in the whole body, is normal. Your own film is burning out. It is the consummation, indeed, of stasis. It is the seizure, not the rapture, but the seizure by the white paradise, of the event, and, of course, as everyone sees the same movie, I would say, at a slightly different speed, depending on whether they pressed fast forward, stop, or rewind. Some of you are living it now, since the simulacrum, that is, your body, your life, your scenario, the world and the worlds meet the sacred, we meet it towards a point of convergence, which is point zero. You know that. And everyone, well, some of you are a little further ahead in the film process. This was already the case at the time for Chief Head, who lived like others among you, lived the events of the celestial weddings, even before they were described a few days later by the Archangel Michael, and the majority lived it. So of course, there could be many questions about sleep, about many things that happen on you, but all of them are, in one way or another, related to transubstantiation in the first instance. I remind you, from a carbonaceous body to a silicic body, which is the body of eternity, which is the temporary structure of the embrace, the ultimate form of embrace of consciousness within a form, called the wide paradise. It is the vibration of the Elohim, or of the crystal body, whatever your dimension of origin, or of stellar lineage or stellar origin, which today, I quote for the record, no longer have strictly no importance, because the more you trust what is, the freer you are of all vibratory, energetic or historical knowledge. This is how you become like a child again. So, for most of you, do not go looking for noon to 2 o'clock, or in the history as I said, even if sometimes it does you good for some of you to have a little reminder or a little support, if I may say so. I'm listening. Brother, a sister of Osasco in Brazil. Dear OMA, at this time, the protection, shelter and nutrition of the body, could you elaborate a little more on how to transcend the limits of the body? Thank you very much. Is it nutrition? Brother, yes, well, she's saying right now, or the attention. Right now, you only have one thing to do. Get inside. Of course it's more pleasant to eat healthily, of course I know that Chief Head had given you a lot of information on how to feed yourself, how to avoid sensitivity to radiation through plasticity, I think, cellular plasticity, he said, through mushrooms and so on. All this has been evoked in countless satsangs. So let me not go back over it, it's not my field, but all I can say is that the more you simplify and the more you get into it, the less you will ask yourself questions about what you should eat, what you should do, or how to oppose the virus, or how to oppose vaccination, or how to oppose the scenario that is unfolding, the nightmare that is unfolding. Understand this. Oh, of course, there will be other questions, and I will answer in the same way, but not to punish you and not answer your questions, but it is to show you, not the futility perhaps at other times, but the futility of all this in relation to the present instant, to the fact of embracing, to the fact of living the truth, and of being what you're in truth, agape. From there, when you see this, you either get scared, and you dig your own hole. Those who want to save their life will lose it. But in the end, you cannot lose anything, since you are not this body, or this world, or any world. The path of Christ has illustrated perfectly, and the seduction would be to want to imagine a new earth, a new consciousness, a new root race, even if it has been described by the greatest occultists, and even by myself, of what has been called the blue race. But you are the blue race. You're as much the sixth dream as the first dream. Fairham and the genetician mothers have given you the vibration, the history, and the consciousness, and the restitution. It is all history, it is also mnemonic means, key moments that you may have lived through for some of you, and it brings you back to the essence of who you are. So you see. So, let's continue, dear brother. Brother, a sister from America in Brazil this time. Could you tell us about vigil and pray, in the context that we are living? Is it part of isolation? Are there appropriate prayers for the unified and free worlds? Thank you, dear OMA. I believe it is someone who has not been following for a long time, because vigil and pray is simply embracing what is. There is nothing to protect. If prayer is seen as a means of self-preservation, it does exactly the opposite. But here too, it is an invitation to reposition oneself in the spontaneity of the present instant and its simplicity. You cannot pray what you are. You can only find it again. The time for prayers is over. When it has been said to vigil, yes, it is see to it that your house is clean, for he will come like a thief in the night, which we are. And he does come like a thief in the night, because it is night over this world, over the illusions of creation. It will soon be the night, I would say concrete, of the event. So there is no vigil and pray. Embrace and be present to yourselves, and that's enough. As long as you want to protect yourself, you press rewind. As long as you stop and resist, you press stop. The more you accept, even without understanding, and especially without understanding, at that moment you live it and you understand, and you press fast forward. That's exactly how it happens now. So another question, brother. Brother, still from Brazil, from Sao Paulo. We projected what our ascension to the unified dimensions would look like. Absolutely. Brother, now that the moment is approaching, what are we really going to see and live? Can you tell us a little about that, please? Thank you immensely, OMA. I believe that it ties in with everything I have answered. There is nothing to see, except white paradise, to identify yourself with what you are, truth of the moment of the first form, white paradise, beyond the form, to see that this form and this first light are nothing, and only emanate from a desire to recognize yourself. All this is inscribed in time zero, in the Alpha and Omega, in all dimensions, in all universes, at the same time. From there on, I have nothing to add, but it is up to you to live it. You can't believe it, it's impossible, you can only live it. Then we continue. Brother, a brother from Brazil always, from Goiânia. OMA, could you give a little update on Namibia please? Thank you in advance. Update on Namibia? But Namibia is in the solar system along with other cosmic events. You know, we know with you, from all dimensions, from all the peoples of the intergalactic confederation of free worlds, that the earth is the place of the resolution of the dream, the nightmare of creation. It is the place of the final disintegration. But this final disintegration is not destruction, because there has never been construction. It was all dreamed. If you prefer the analogy, you're living a computer simulation, and every movie on this planet has told you that. They told you the truth, it wasn't science fiction. Wake up, you wake up. It's been explained by our different voices in utress dimensions, since the very beginning of the celestial weddings. The purpose was known. Of course, you went back up the thread of history, you found the dimensions, some of you had access to their stellar origins, to their stellar lineages, to the superconsciousness, to the other dimensions. But all of this was only a dream, but you had to remember this dream, to sit as we have been telling you all these years, to establish the light, to allow it to be pillars of light and to raise the vibratory level. It was a preliminary step, if I may say so. So all these scenarios, they are real, no one lead, but they're happening at the same time as instant zero. Memories, I remind you that here on earth we had forgotten, because it was, as it was said, the fall. There is no fall, there was a voluntary cut that was already inscribed from the beginning, the confinement by the Etons and the Dracos who were playing their part without knowing it to put an end to the illusion of creation. There are no more bad guys than good guys, there is no more creation, there is no more dream, there is no more nightmare. There is just a gape, and more of you are living it. So that's it. What do you have to do with it? I would say stripping you of your stellar lineages, of your stellar origins, of your vibrations. That does not mean to deny them, it also means going through them, not staying in the movement of what moves and what passes. You are what has never moved, and there is felicity, agape, not elsewhere. And as long as you don't accept the reality of what is happening, even on the screen of consciousness, of your body or the screen of this world, which necessarily leads to the final blaze, as long as you don't accept it, as long as you don't acquiesce completely, you are still subject, somewhere, to the script, to the story and to the consciousness, and to the dream of individuality. It will become clearer and clearer to you, whatever you say. What I am telling you is not to be believed, is not to be accepted, but is to be verified by your lived experience, and you cannot avoid it, but I can tell you that. And this is valid for all consciences, for all ages, for all dimensions, for the Arcturians, for the Andromedians, for the geneticist mothers, for the civilization of triangles, for the human being, for the child that has just been born. No one can escape what he is, but nothing that you see is real, nothing that you feel is real, it just gives you the ability to feel your way. That is what we have been doing all these years with you. So we keep going, because it's always the same kinds of questions. I'm not saying they're inappropriate or not rigorous, but understand that even these questions that I've asked you so many times, only translate what I've been explaining to you since the beginning of my speech. So can you tell me how long I've been talking, because I'm not going to saturate you for hours and hours. Moreover, I advise you, dear brother, if the questions are redundant, like that with regard to the future or any scenario, to include them in everything you have asked me. There is no point in giving them again. Brother, okay, we're moving forward, okay. How long have we been talking? Brother, just 1 short hour. Then we can continue. Brother, good. Then a sister from Ringla in Brazil. Dear Oma, we are living passionate in different moments, both for the physical and mental body, experiencing experiences in the flesh that are beyond our understanding. Recently my husband lived in his own body, first an Indian, then a baby, then an animal, then he came back for water. But first he hurt himself. How can I go through this with him in the best way? How can I act in these cases? I appreciate your answer, Oma. In all situations, I repeat, you do not have to act, you have to be. Whatever happens in your intimacy, on the screen of the world, acceptance is the key to everything. Not because you have to accept the unacceptable, do not be stupid, but because the acceptance of the unacceptable puts you in a state of acceptance, not of this horror, but in a state of instantaneous acceptance of the light, of the true light, and of who you are. That is all. Afterwards, judge as you wish, see it as a horror, but you will no longer be affected by it. Understand well what I am telling you, and what I am repeating to you tonight. In the face of every event, at the time I would have said to you, what do you put in front of it, love or fear? Now you don't have to put anything in front, you have to put something inside. You put yourself inside, it is there that you embrace, it is there that you accept, it is there that you accept, and it is there that you live agape. Don't ask yourself any more questions, it can be solved, and you have to live it. And each day that passes in this nightmare, it is faster and faster for you. Do you still have to have the idea? Do you still have to think about it? And, above all, do not yet oppose it. Isn't that right? Come on, let's continue. Brother, I have one from Quebec, I have to ask you anyway. I don't know if my question is relevant, I'm asking it anyway. I have a little hitch in that they, newspapers and television, have not gone to the moon. Next question. Brother, okay. Why is it that we vibrate with joy and feel tired, empty and with a crazy heart, as if nothing makes sense anymore? And as far as we can try, or life, we cannot increase our vibration. It is as if everything is pain and emptiness, it is an immense desire to cry and go inside. Why doesn't that happen, or does it happen, Oma? The answer is in the question. You have to go inside, and if life for you has to go through painful phenomena, resistance, absence of vibration, it is because you are still too much externalized at the level of consciousness. All the intelligence of the light is to put you in front of what is necessary for you, never superfluous, never too much, never useless and never excessive. It is you who really determine what you are living, not by intention or any will, but again by acceptance. It is acceptance that creates zero time, literally. It is acceptance that creates time zero and agape, literally. And if you suffer, if you're affected, you have to go through this. It doesn't mean that you don't have to do anything, but first you have to embrace and accept life, the present instant of zero time and agape, and then it will be time to take care of what is to be taken care of, for example. But if you do the opposite, you do not discover the truth for the moment, and you suffer. And it's going to be more and more like that. I think that Bida mentioned it well. I had said love or fear, and then afterwards, remember, it was love or suffering. But you create your own suffering. You have to accept that there is no victim, there is no culprit, there is no executioner, there is no rescuer. Come out of this triad that we have already mentioned to you many years ago. Discover the truth, and the rest will be given to you. In addition, freedom, in confinement. That's wonderful. Everything else is just a waste of time, everything else is just pressing the stop button or rewinding backwards, from the same film. And as long as you ask the question of why you don't understand, why it's not simple, it's because you didn't get inside. It's as simple as that. You see, it is not proselytizing, it is not a religion, it is not a vibratory exercise, it is not something that needs to be dissected intellectually or that requires knowledge to understand what I am telling you. It's something to live. It's for everyone, truly. Come on, continue. Brother, it was said that the astral plane was dissolved in 2009. However, even today we see in the spirit centers people coming into contact with beings on the astral plane. How is this possible? Thank you. Of course, the astral of the earth was liberated many years ago, but there remained the individual astral, there remained the most primary egregores, if I may say so, the adhesions to the gods, whatever they may be besides. And then there remained something else, what is called, I believe, the collective unconscious, and no longer the astral, that is to say, all the wounds, all the suffering, all the hidden things, all the occult things, predation, Satanism, Luciferianism, and all that you are discovering today, for some people, in a somewhat stupefied manner, and which has kept this world in confinement, which has participated in the confinement, which has participated in the predation. All that you see, and it's part of the nightmare, it's part of the scenario, it's part of the disease of consciousness itself, you know, the great psychiatrists, psychologists, the ones who talk to you about the unconscious, the subconscious. But of course, there is an unconscious, it is full of fears, the fears of humanity, since time immemorial, the fears of loss, of separation, of lack. All these incubi, these succubi, which have been nourished by ourselves, the ones and the others, that we have created, which are no longer strictly speaking astral, but they are forces which are so insisted, so to speak, that they are deep, a bit like what you call on the surface of the earth a deep state, that is to say what is below the level of consciousness, the subconscious, but it is no longer astral, it is memories of wounds that you have to evacuate because it is you, without any exception. You're at the same time the one who eats the child, and you're at the same time the child who is eaten, or who is raped. It is hard, it is very hard for the person, it is very hard for the conscience, but it is a great freedom for the truth. It is not to be accepted, it is to be lived and to go through, there too. Then we can continue. Brother, does reincarnation in this world always exist, if the person is? I prefer not to answer these kinds of questions, which have been the subject of countless communications. I am well aware that many brothers and sisters who are now discovering are still in the old pattern of spirituality, of free will, of karma, of the law of retribution for karma. I will respond to all of this with one thing that has been said for a very long time. There are two laws in the universe, manifested as well as unmanifested. The law of action-reaction and the law of grace. The law of action-response was created by the lords of karma, by your all-day Barrett, by all those so-called karmic clickers who are nothing but swindlers and manipulators, ascended masters, consorts and fellow masters. And then on the other hand, what do you have? There I am talking about those who are the originators of karma and free will. There is no free will. You are free. How can you talk about the notion of choice or freedom? If you're talking about choice or freedom or free will, or the power of intention, you just haven't lived who you are, that's all. There is no guilt or judgment, there is just a repositioning, and the best way to reposition yourself is to accept, embrace and live the truth. That's all. And the truth doesn't need a story. Truth doesn't need a script, it doesn't need dimensions, it doesn't need you, it doesn't need me. It doesn't need anyone, no master, no savior, no one. And that's what we are. So, one or two more questions, and then I propose, because the questions here, they all seem to be about the same thing, and I propose that you save the questions for another intervention. We must not go beyond 1 hour and a half if you wish. Brother, yes. So, one more little one or two? Then one or two. Brother, dear Oma, my son is sensitive but uses alcohol and drugs. He sees things in the sky that I don't see. Should I believe him and encourage him, or is it just a matter of accepting him without comment? Thank you. I'd say neither. If in these particular times you have to live this with a son who is living this, then, of course, you understand this as well, something to be overcome. That is to say that the question you're asking me boils down to two choices. I propose something else to you, it is that you have no choice. Accept and embrace what is, and then things will change. But don't put the carriage before the horse, so to speak. Live the truth, it is the best way to help your son, and that does not justify choice towards one or the other, because it is first of all a question of being, and the choice will present itself. And the choice that presents itself is a non-choice, because it is the evidence of the truth and the evidence of the intelligence of the light, which is to be experienced by everyone. So last question if you will. Brother, and then maybe a little testimony afterwards. Our testimonies with pleasure, that will change us. Brother, then one last one. Oma, I am very grateful for your presence by my side. In the face of all that we have lived through, it is sometimes inevitable to wonder if this world. No, let's drop that, forgive me. Brother, Oma, thank you for being here with us, it is always a great joy to listen to you. Do you want to talk to us or make a summary so that we can understand and maybe make the difference between the Blue Beam Project and the real heavenly signals and the call of Mary? I don't know if it's very clear to me, thanks again for everything. So it is very simple, independently of any vibratory perception and feeling, independently even, I remind you of Orion's greeting, you can only laugh about Blue Beam, they made you believe that you were going to be seduced by the images, but does what they present you and give you as a reading of what is lived, if you want what we would call the narrative of what you are living, today in all the countries of the world, correspond to reality. Didn't you see the red noses? So do not worry about Blue Beam and the celestial signs, any human being will not be fooled by that, in the same way as today with the intelligence of the light and the apocalypse, that is revelation and enlightenment, you see very well that you are no longer fooled by all your puppets who want to sell you vaccines, a new world order, put you in dictatorship. No one is fooled, at least not even those who do not talk about it, and the same is true of Blue Beam and the true heavenly signs. Only those who imagine being deceived in these times will apparently be deceived, but even being deceived will wake you up from the nightmare. It's true that for some of you, being caught and taken alive in Ekans refrigerators will wake you up, that's for sure. I will end with this humorous note before you give the testimonies. Everything we have told you is strictly true and you are living it, but what is true and what passes is not the truth. There, I would say my words a little ironically, if you have to wake up because you were being eaten by a Draco, that is what you have chosen to write, to see that you are not this body and that you are also the one who is eating yourself. If you have to wake up in white paradise and in the sweetness of the wilderness, that's how it must be for you. And if you are playing a puppet that thinks it is going to pray in any way, and I would say that even for the chief puppets, well, let them dream, that is their role, and they are there to wake you up, but also to give you nightmares to wake you up. And remember that all this is just a theater, a video game scene, as Eber would say. It has no substance in relation to the truth that you are, but it has a certain weight, more and more weight within the dream of creation, because it's a nightmare. And the nightmare inevitably brings you back to the white paradise and the truth. That's it, I'm done for me today. Don't worry about the other questions, especially don't send any more, because there are still many more to answer, and the next time I come back, I will certainly have other things to say during this month of May. We are going to let this beautiful month of May start and spend the first fortnight of May, which is likely to be thrilling on the Conscience Show, rest assured. And now I am listening, if you will, because I suppose the testimonies are addressed to me but also to each of you, of course. Brother. Yes. A sister from Campinas, Brazilian. I would just like to tell you, Oma, that I feel your presence more and more, and a smile of proof and sweetness accompanied by the high-pitched noise of the spheres, devouring all that remains in the fire of agape. In the silence of absence, I thank you. Brother. Still from Brazil. Oma, my gratitude for your teachings. I think I'm one of those who feel nothing, just a little shock on the left side that passes very quickly. I don't dare to say it is a vibration, because that is all I feel. But since I was a child, in my childhood, I was sure that I was not of this world, and I continue with this certainty, for all that I hear on your channelings. Gratitude, Oma. Thank you. Brother. A sister from France. I just want to say thank you, Grandpa Oma. I know you're here, a real sunshine. It's so good, such grace. Brother. A Brazilian sister from Ringa again. I thank Oma for being close to us at this time, for being here inside, and also face to face, for accompanying us, for bringing so much lightness. It feels so good. We love you, Oma. I just have to embrace your vibration and your big heart. Invite me to the party. Brother. A sister from Portugal. I simply have to testify my immense gratitude for your divine words, which have helped us during all these years to raise the blindfolded eyes that we all had on life, on religion, and on what is spirit, because during all this time, they have taught us only lies. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. There you go. Well, thank you for all the testimony. So I'll end with these words, which are humorous. You've been referred to as an observer. You're not the person, you are the observer. That was the refutation many years ago. You have gone through different layers, different inner revelations. Today, this revelation concerns the cinema, the video game, and I remind you that I used the analogy of the film. The film is known in its entirety in all universes and multi-dimensions everywhere, but it had to be played. But this play is not in time, nevertheless in illusion, because the resolution is here on the earth of origins, of course, which is Gaia. I told you, you are not the observer either, but I could say that you are the one who makes the projection and who controlled the running of the tape. Remember that. But you can't control the running of the tape by wanting to interfere with the tape or the film. You can only play with the speed of the film. The more you're inside, the more you have moments of silence, of interiority, of vibration if you want, the more you're in the embrace, in the reception, in the receptivity, and not of images, not of energy, not of vibration, but of agape, in silence, you'll live it. Remember that, you only need an instant, a moment, and life is for most of you even if you have little devils at home. I am talking about your children, I am not talking about the little devils of the time. You nevertheless have moments for you, at any time. You only need a moment, to discover the truth. I told you from the first question, I believe, to embrace and accept the unacceptable. It is unacceptable for the person, it is unacceptable for the conscience, but in agape everything is acceptable because it is all just passing. You have always been there. With these few words, I convey to you all my love, all my blessings, and I wish you a good first fortnight of this beautiful month of May, which begins in a few hours for you. I'll see you soon. Goodbye. Bye. Through Jean-Luc Young. English Revised Translation, LMF.